So after November 12th, Shingo city, which had been partly liberated, but was kind of like a kind of miniature Stalingrad, was finally fully liberated. And the city had been laced with tunnels by ISIS. It had been laced with munitions, explosives. And much of the city had been destroyed in airstrikes or destroyed by ISIS itself. And we can see some videos at the end of some of that. So there you can see some of the Yazidi Peshmerga liberating the city with Qasem Sheshu at the front with the mustache. And after they liberated it, they threw up new front lines around the city in those areas. So here you can see a situation of what things look like today. So there you see the mountain in green. You can see our city is here. And you can see the front line. And then all the purple dots are the mass graves that have been found so far. Now you can see some of the other ones. South of that are the expected ones that people know about through testimony of survivors. And then I'll show you some of the pictures of what the graves look like. So one of the ones we visited was this what they've labeled on this map, which was made by this Yazidi organization. So they've labeled this 11, 12, and 13. So you can see what these look like. They would be indistinguishable to me or someone. You wouldn't think that there's a grave there. ISIS buried the bodies using bulldozers under not so much earth. And the rain came, and the dogs and the animals came and ate at the bodies. And you'll see some of the pictures, which are quite graphic. Here is one of the local Yazidi politicians. He's holding an M16 shell and an AK-47 shell. They were shot in the back of the head with American munitions. And, of course, non-American munitions, AK-47s, that were stolen from the Iraqi army. Huh? Yeah? So you can see the bones of the people. In many cases, when they were discovered, people went through what was found to find IDs of if they could, of some of the relics. But you can see very little is done to preserve the site or to protect it. It's left like this, and I assume it has not changed much since I was there, which is just 2 months ago or so. You see a young boy's shocker jersey and skulls. You see women's clothes of elderly women that were murdered. Human hair of the women, in this case. So as I said, the graves are open to the elements, right? I think there is very little. There is a lot done in Dahuk in terms of documenting the missing people and those that were murdered by Daesh. But there's very little done in the Shingal area to protect the graves. It's not a question just of international experts. It's a question also of just building an enclosure. But this is still an active war zone, right? We're talking in many cases the grave is only a few kilometers from the front line, which means when you're standing there, you can hear the coalition airstrikes. In theory, you could be under mortar fire if ISIS were close enough, or if it was foggy, you could be a victim of an ISIS attack if they got close to the front line. So, and as people may be familiar with, ISIS has been accused now of launching chemical attacks now on Shingal. So we're not talking about a place that's safe. We're talking about a place that is an active war zone, an active conflict zone, right? I mean, it's like if you liberated Buchenwald and the front line was a few kilometers away, and someone said, well, why can't you just figure all this out? Well, no, there's a war going on. So you have to consider that other aspect. There's no simple story here. But the fact is that you do have this, that's what the graves are like. We visited another grave over by the other side of Shingal, which I think here is labeled 18. You can see here the blindfolds that they put on the people. You can see here more of that. And here, well, you can see the disposition of the graves. So you see the clothing the people wore and the shoes. You can see Iraqi patches. Some of the Yazidi men were members of a local Iraqi police unit or government, paramilitary, and those badges were then left there. So here you can see get the idea of the size of this grave. It's very close to this wadi, so some of the blood, they said, washed into the wadi, nothing will grow there, and some of the bones and such like that. And of course, so you can imagine it's still an issue of erosion. And you can see what's been done here is a very limited attempt to mark this off, right? But this, by the way, is very close. The front line is that, you see the berm in the background at the top? That's the front line that was carved out to keep ISIS away. It's only a few hundred meters from the armed position. And you can see here the IDs that they found at the site. That's how they identified. In so many cases, some people knew who had been executed, they thought, but they found the IDs would give proof of the names there. So some of the final details, I think that the UN said in January around 3,500 people still missing. Obviously, people will say, well, there were lots of other people killed in Iraq. That's true. Although not, I don't think to the degree and to the same trauma. I mean, okay, so Camp Speicher, they killed 1,000 Shia cadets, right? But most Iraqi Shia live where the Iraqi Shia have always lived. And the fact is, yes, Kurds were killed, but Kurds were able to defend Kurdistan and the Karachi areas. But the Yazidi Kurds especially, that minority group, 90 or 80% of them were refugees, right? Their entire community life has been destroyed in most cases, right? So in terms of the vast scale. Now, for the Christians, it's similar to the ones in Mosul area, because they lost everything and live in Erbil. Luckily, the Christians were lucky because they were not executed. They were given some time to leave. And for the most part, they were not sold into slavery, which I think is what is unique. No one sold any Shia women into sex slavery, as far as I know. So that's, I think, one of the unique aspects of this immense crime. You can see even today on the road, the items that the Yazidis had with them when they fled, because they fled through the mountain, most of that is left there. The burned cars, the discarded clothes, the child's clothes, the toys, all of that still there. A whole people's lives discarded right there, and still sitting there after, now will be soon 2 years. I'll go back to her in a second. On Mount Shingal, something like 20,000 people live. These are the non-standard, non-refugee camps, right? People living in tents, very sometimes caravan, with their animals that they pasture. And now almost 2 years like that. And it's tell you, it's not warm up there, it's cold, it's exposed to the elements, no schools, no health care, which is why this woman is interesting. So this woman is a Kurdish woman from Syria. Yeah, and she agreed to be helicoptered in September right after ISIS had attacked, to be helicoptered in to serve. She was a doctor to serve the people, the Yazidis there. And you can imagine, in a war in which women are especially being targeted for rape and murder, she agreed to go in and stay with the people on the mountain, which at the time everyone thought that they would be captured and destroyed quickly. But they were not defeated, and she's still there. She operates a small clinic at the very top of the mountain, where she sees a few hundred people a day. When I was there, it was a non-stop line of people. And she does that with the Barzani Foundation and some other meager support by herself 7 days a week. Now, the camps that are like this, were built in the KRG areas, in which the majority of the people are living like this. Not like anyone who's been to a refugee camp. Straight roads of rubble, dirt, mud, people in tents, some minor community facility, probably some minor healthcare thing. But that's not a life. You can't live like that. I mean, for years and years. It's a temporary solution, right? And so that's one of the pictures of one of the larger camps. But that's basically how they look. In Shingal today, when I was there, that's me with some of the Peshmerga guys and my friend Bagher Sadullah, who was a journalist. That's a team of guys that go out every day to demine the city from unexploded ordnance, right? Bombs or UXO, and IEDs or what's left of them. And these guys fought Saddam Hussein. He spent 8 years in a prison of Saddam. They were involved in trying to find the bombs and the mines that Saddam left around Halabja, right? And now they're there, also with limited resources, risking their lives, with very little support. From the international community, they had the full support of the government. But you also have that issue. How can you reoccupy a city when there's bombs and tunnels everywhere? And how can you reoccupy a city that looks like this? That's a U.S. Humvee that was eviscerated by a U.S. bomb, probably. And that's in the middle of Mount Shingal City, right? Here's a few of the Yazidis that do live there. They live in the shop, and their only customers, of course, are Peshmerga, so they're selling cigarettes and grape juice and Carlsberg beer. Someone apparently drinks that. I'm not sure who. But that's a nice main street in Shingal, right? I mean, that looks like a place you'd like to live. I mean, it's a fixer-upper. So there you go. That's the city. It doesn't all look like that. I'll show you a video. Some of the city is in slightly better condition. Here's some of the Yazidi fighters out by the front line. It's an incredibly beautiful area. Very picturesque, very beautiful. So you can see here, some of this has changed probably, but you can see the situation on the ground, right? You can see Mosul and the areas that Daesh still controls in Iraq. I don't know if people recall, but the offensive to retake Ramadi, which took a long time, and ended up destroying 90% of the city. And the rest of Iraq's going to look like that every inch that they have to take. There won't be anything left. When they take Mosul, we'll see what happens with it. And Tel Afar. But that's the big issue now, I think, is Mosul, because it divides that region. And it's a political problem, because, of course, the Baghdad government does not want the Peshmerga there, and many of the Peshmerga don't want to waste their lives taking it. So ISIS is not defeated, I think. You cannot say that. This is a war that will keep going. Obviously, there's issues of Kurdish independence involved, right? Issues of redrawing borders in this region. But I think now when we go back to this questions of was it genocide, I think we have to answer quite clearly we've seen a genocide. Some of the aspects of this genocide are unique, but sexual violence against women. Now, trading in slaves is strange, different, But the sexual violence against women is typical of genocide. It's not like this is different. What happened in Rwanda, they targeted the Tutsi women. And what they did in the Holocaust, Jewish women were subjected to special treatment. In many cases, it's not always discussed in the Holocaust literature or to kids when they teach Holocaust, but that was a unique abuse in cases. And Armenian women as well, right? The same thing during the Armenian genocide. So I think that that there is much to learn in terms of linkage and comparison and discussion about the nature of what ISIS did. I mean, of course it's true that in other cases there were massacres of Yazidis, or for instance, even Al-Qaeda, the massive bomb that was in 2007 or so, which large numbers of people were killed. But the nature of, I think, the systematic separation of people and what was done, I think, makes us very unique and different than some of the other things we've seen. As usual, the international community, I think, as usual, irresponsible, didn't do anything, didn't, pays lip service to things, but even as we see today, is not willing to track down the war criminals, right? Where is the ICC and all these organizations? And there's always some excuse. Oh, Iraq is not a member of the ICC. Okay, fine. But why is it there's always some complex excuse? And even if you are a country like Libya that tries to put the people on the dock, like the Gaddafis, then the international community says, I don't know, it's not by our standards. What standards? Okay, the standards of what the Soviets did after the Second World War, they hung most of the Nazis they captured. I mean, so, I don't know. I think that there's always some story we hear. But the fact is, these European countries have not done enough to search down every member who went to fight for ISIS. And as Zach joked about before, it wasn't so long ago, they were actually trying to rehabilitate people that came back to Europe. They gave them gym memberships. And they said, we'll give you scholarships after you've come back from beheading people. Right? I mean, it's insane. And by the way, who was charged in Australia? Almost. Guys that went to fight with the Kurds, right? Guys that joined the YPG and Peshmergas. Some of those foreign volunteers, they face prosecution at home. They're lucky, like Gallagher, who died in Syria, but they don't get home, because if they go home, they could face a prosecution. But if you're a member of ISIS and you held up heads on Twitter, well, we're not sure if it's a war crime. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, who wrote a book. She wrote a book about America in the age of genocide. Why didn't America do enough during the Rwandan genocide? She wrote a book about it. She was at the UN when it was happening. So, I mean, it's like writing a book about fighting the Nazis. Then you've got Nazis and you say, oh, well, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, so you can see the little bit from the Human Rights Watch thing. I thought it was funny. Iraqi authorities should invite neutral international friends. Which are the unneutral ones? Well, members of ISIS, Tibet? What is neutral? What they mean is non-Kurdish, right? I think. We don't trust the KRG to do it. To preserve and analyze. Look, they're totally correct. Someone should pour a bunch of money into preserving the sites. Someone needs to do that. Someone should pour money into helping the refugees who are living on Mount Shingal, not just giving food to the people in the camps, but the people that tried to stay there. Someone should provide money to rebuild Smune and all these places. I'm going to conclude the presentation. I'll show you a few videos. You can ask questions. Just as a reminder, because you guys were talking about minorities, right, in the Middle East. We saw some Yazidi Peshmergas. I just took this as a picture of an Assyrian Christian militia, a member of the Nineveh Plains forces. So, as we've been talking about these other groups that signed on to fight Daesh, this is one of the groups I also met when I was there. And there's a cute little picture of a kid with a Kurdish flag. So as I said, you can find most of my all of my research online. You can find my documentaries and all of that. And maybe I'll show you just if I can find them. A few videos here. Let's see. Are these videos? Maybe they're videos. What is this? Work. There you go. Yeah, so you can just see that's some video from this refugee camp, and maybe we'll see a few others of these. This video, if it works, is quite jarring. So here's what Shingal or Shinjar city looks like today. Okay. Right, so that's the city, or large town, or whatever it was. So you can see some of the houses are intact. It's not all rubble. Some neighbors were better than others. The Yazidi shops, ISIS labeled them as Yazidis, and then burned them, right? So it's interesting how they did that, which perhaps reminds us of Kristallnacht or whatever when they wrote Jew on the shops. And let's see. So there's Sheikh Nasser with the skull, showing with a bullet penetrated. Here's another one. So there you can see some of this, some more footage of the mass graves area. So there were 3 in this section. So this is one of them, and each one is not so big. You know, the size of the stage, basically. You can see that the mountain is not so far away. And all this footage is in the documentary. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so go ahead. If you want to take some questions or what have you.
Thank you very much for